Hello guys, my name is Tom Antos, and in this video I want to show you how I created this parody scene with my brother, making fun of basically of the movie The Matrix. We did, instead of Matrix Reloaded, we did Matrix Retired. And here's basically how my finished scene looks. So anyways, as you guys can see, simple scene I did with my brother. I actually did a tutorial already kind of showing how we filmed this whole thing. So if you guys want, I'll provide the link for that. You can check it out. It's going to be in the description of this video. But in this tutorial today, I just want to show you guys how I did the actual bullet time effect. So here's my clip. I'll just basically take one of these shots and I'll just do the effect to this shot, and then you guys can kind of follow along and just duplicate it for all the other shots or kind of shots that you might have similar in your film. I'm editing in Adobe Premiere, so the good thing is it's already part of the Adobe Creative Suite, so I can just right click on my shot and bring it into After Effects quickly so that I can start doing the actual effect in there. So I'm gonna right click on this and go in here, replace with After Effects Composition, and that's going to start up Adobe After Effects for me. Then in Adobe After Effects, it's going to ask you to save this project somewhere. So I'm just going to call it Matrix 1. Oh, something already exists like that, so just call Matrix Retired 1. Alright, so I'm in here in Adobe After Effects, and as you can see, the cool thing is that my whole shot is in here, the whole basically timeline, the sequence is already set up for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete, actually here I did some basic color grading, but I'm going to delete that. And the first thing I want to do is I want to track this shot so that I actually have basically calculate how the 3D camera was moving and create like a virtual 3D camera, because the effect I'm going to be applying is actually going to be 3D. So I'm going to right click on this, and first I'm just going to pre-compose it because I have some time ramping here that I did. So I'm going to click here, move all attributes to new composition, and just click OK. Once we have this pre-composed, now I can right click on it and go track camera. So it's just going to do its thing. It's going to basically analyze the shot frame by frame, and then after that we can create the actual 3D camera. So I'll just kind of fast forward till it's done analyzing. There, it's done. Now it's solving the camera, and you can want to kind of just scroll through it, make sure that these points are actually tracking the scene properly, and it looks like they are. So if that's the case, then we can go in and create an actual 3D camera. So here we're just going to create in the effects control here under the 3D camera tracker, just click create camera, and you can see it creates a new layer called 3D tracker camera. And if we go in here, let's say go to two views, so we have here our main camera view, and this is our right now which one is this? This is our top view, it tells you up here, and you can switch from left, right, bottom, all that stuff. So if I select the camera, which is this little kind of triangle, this is the camera up here. You can see this little box, and this triangle is basically the field of view of where the camera is actually looking. And or you can see when I select the camera, it shows me this kind of a line here with all these points. That basically is the path that the camera travels. It kind of goes forward a little bit on an angle to the left, and that's actually what was happening to the camera in real life when I filmed this shot. And then also while the camera is moving forward, it's kind of doing a slight pan to the right. So it looks like it tracked it properly. So now what we can actually do is we can again select our shot, and we can select here the 3D camera tracker, and we can create some of the basically points we can recreate in 3D. So I'm going to just select this thing, render track points, and I'm going to select some of these points. So for example, up here, this point, maybe another one up here. I'm just going to click shift so I can select multiple points, so that I know that this is basically where my brother is standing. So that point, and so here, select it again. I can go right click on it and go create two nulls. So it's going to create two nulls in my scene, which are going to be 3D nulls. So they're actually going to be floating in 3D space, and that will kind of give me a little point of reference of where basically the scene is, where it's taking place. I'm also going to select another point here on the ground that's kind of in front of my brother, and again go create null. And you can see now I have my three nulls. So one is here in the basically closer to the camera, and then the next null here is here, a little further away, and then another one is pretty much in the same spot but just lower because that's where his feet are. So that's how I know that these points now are kind of representing in 3D space where everything is happening. So once I have this done, I can exit here, go right now to one view, and just turn off this render track points, so it's no longer in my view. And as you can see, all I'm noticing now is just these null objects, which are actually 3D points. So I'll just kind of move it around like this, and you also want to make sure that this stuff is actually properly tracking. Just save my scene here. Okay, so I'm going to now create my actual bullet. So I'm going to go here, click New, Cinema 4D file, and it's going to ask me to save this file somewhere. So I'm just going to name it here, Bullet. And Cinema 4D is basically like a 3D application. You can actually get the full version, which really unlocks a lot of possibilities, but you get the light version of that program included in Adobe After Effects. So as you can see, when I created a layer, it kind of starts up Cinema 4D up here. So here it is. You can kind of move around in 3D space here. And really what we want to do is a very simple kind of a 3D object. So I'm going to go in here and just create a simple shape. I'm going to switch the view here to right, and I just want to create like a shape that looks sort of like the edge of a bullet. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to select this tool here, and we'll just select which one is it? This one, maybe B-spline. Okay, and now what I want to do is create another point here that kind of maybe rounds off that bullet, something like that. Okay, there it is. So once we draw kind of our one side of the outline of our bullet, we're going to use this curve to basically make an object out of it, a 3D object. So select it here and the right side on the panel, and then you click one of these tools and you can extrude it, do different things out of it. We're going to lathe this thing. Basically means it's going to rotate around the center of it. So click this, you can see it creates a new layer. Then we're going to grab our spline and just basically click on it and then drag it until you see this little arrow. That means it's going to make it a kind of a child of that lathe shape. And when I drop it, you can see now we have our 3D object that we can kind of look around. And this 3D object now we can edit by just taking those points you can see there on the spline, and we can adjust it. So let's say we want the bullet to be a little bit thinner here. We can move it around maybe like this. Maybe take that point there on the bottom. And that's how you can kind of really make sure that you're getting the kind of bullet that you want or shape. And this way you can make anything. You can make a glass or things like that. So very simple, easy, fast way of modeling. But anyways, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. This is, I think, it looks good. I might maybe take these 3 points here and just kind of move them up, make our bullet a little bit longer. So once you're happy with the shape of your bullet, then you're done with basically with the modeling part, and then you can add some textures to it. You can, for example, go here, create a shader. You can, for example, load a material from one of the presets. So there's different ones. There's actually some metal ones. So, for example, you can see cast iron, all that stuff, multicolor. Let's say this is kind of shows you a little preview of the. Let's say like a shiny bullet, and you can just kind of drag it over your model, and that's how you're going to apply the texture to it. So you can do all kinds of things like that. You can also animate it. If you want to update basically whatever you do up here, if you want it to show up in After Effects, you got to make sure you click Save here. And then when you go back to After Effects, you're going to see here that it updates. So we can see how the bullet looks in here. Now, one thing you'll notice is that the bullet is not actually moving. So here in our bullet layer, we're gonna go, first of all, the render, I'll just do something right now, like quick, just a software maybe. Draft, let's see, something like that. I can also, like, see final just means that it's a little bit more detailed. But you'll notice as I'm scrolling now through it, the bullet doesn't really seem to update. So if I wanted to actually be moving, or like basically look like it's actually belonging to the scene, I want to have the camera not be the actual Cinema 4D camera, because that is basically whatever I see up here. Like if I rotate the camera from here, save it, then it's going to update again in After Effects. You see now we're seeing the bullet from up above. But we're going to actually use our own camera here from within the scene. So you can go comp camera, or you can go centered comp camera. Just basically going to use our comp camera, but it's going to center the scene here. So as you can notice now I can kind of scroll through it, and it looks like this giant bullet is basically there floating in space. And you can obviously go in and, you know, in here you can scale it down, do things like that. So, you know, that's kind of how you would work with this. So as an example, you can scale it here. You can scale it this way, that way, however you want to scale it. You can, for example, make it this small, again, save it. And then when you go back to our scene here, you can see now the bullet is much smaller. If you want to rotate the bullet, again, the same kind of thing. You're basically just, you know, animating it here. And so you would basically now animate it in the program here to make it look like the bullet is flying in that direction there. So that, again, it looks like it's, you know, it's flying through the scene. But what we're actually going to do is I'm going to kind of show you guys how, there's again another way of doing this. You can use, like I said, finish the whole thing in Cinema 4D. It's a very capable 3D program. You can do some really advanced, actually, 3D stuff. But it's like a whole other program to learn. So I would suggest, if you're into it, just, you know, follow the tutorials that come with the program. So what I'm actually going to do now is export this model, but in order to use it in the other application I'm going to be using, then I'm going to have to convert it to a polygon. So click this button here, and then we can go ahead and export this one. And just go File, Export, or Save Select Object As. And we'll just save it as a bullet. And then back in After Effects, we can just hide this layer now, because we're going to create a new layer. Go Layer, New, Solid. Doesn't matter what color it is. We're just going to call it Bullet. And in this one, we're going to apply a plugin. This is a plugin you have to pay for, Video Copilot Element 3D. It's a kind of a cool 3D application that works right in Adobe After Effects. Click on Scene Setup here. And we can import our scene here. Alright, so we have our model here of the bullet, and one thing we want to do is apply some textures to it, again, some shaders. So there's some different shaders up here. They have some metal ones too, so we can just try different ones again and kind of just drag and drop it. And I think somewhere there looks kind of like a silver bullet, but whatever. Gives you this effect of metal, right? So I think that's pretty cool. And we'll just click OK, and actually I'm gonna make sure that we have it assigned to one of the groups. So this is automatically, I guess, assigns it to group number 1. Click OK, and now you'll notice that we have our silver bullet here in the scene. And if I scroll through it, what you also notice is it kind of renders faster than the Cinema 4D. That's one of the reasons why I like working with Element 3D. It just preview is faster. Also, it's quicker applying shaders and things like that. There's a lot of cool presets. Anyway, so once we have our bullet, it's time to animate this bullet. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to create a new null object. Or actually, you know what? I can even take one of our null objects, like the one that's here in the scene. Which is the second one, and I'm just going to duplicate that, and that's how gonna be our bullet null. So I'm gonna move this object because I want to kind of, like I said, maybe make it look like the bullet is flying here towards him, maybe like towards his head, somewhere there. So I'm gonna go like this, move it in 3D space, and I'm gonna go with this null. I'm gonna basically keyframe the animation, the position of it. So gonna click the little stopwatch next to position, and then I'm gonna go back basically to the first frame of the shot, and I'm gonna move this back, basically back towards us, and we can have the bullet coming from here. Maybe I'll actually make it look like it's coming in from somewhere here, and be a little bit lower. It's starting somewhere there. So now if you'll notice that null is going to be moving in like that, and maybe we actually want to kind of have it you know, coming in basically earlier. So one way I can do it is just go back here to our two views, and again, this is the kind of the path that our bullet is traveling on. So maybe I'll have it kind of starting somewhere right here off screen, so as we scroll through the animation, we see the bullet entering a little bit faster. So you'll notice now we have our null here that's flying through the space. Kind of looks like it's basically where we want the bullet to be flying, but the bullet itself is just floating kind of in the middle of the scene. So what we actually want to do is we want to kind of link this to the position of this thing. So what we'll do is we'll take our bullet layer, which is in our bullet models under group 1, and here under group utilities, you have create group null. So we click that, creates a new null basically called group 1, and you'll notice that if I move this null now, notice this is how it's kind of moving through the scene. And we could animate this on its own, but we can also link it to the position of the other one. So it's going to go here to position of this one, position of our other null. I'm going to copy this one here to that. So go Control C, and then select the position of this one and go Control P, and as you can see, now it's been copied. So now the motion of the bullet is correct. We can hide the other null, and now we can also animate things like, for example, the scale of it. We can adjust it, make it bigger, smaller. We can also here for example, go and rotate the bullet so it's kind of facing the right way instead of flying like crazy. So somewhere there like this, kind of make it look like it's flying towards our retired Neo. So somewhere there, this is how it looks, the bullet. And I think the position here is a little too much, maybe like that, or the rotation. And the scale, I'm still gonna make it smaller. So this is kind of how it's looking. And actually what I'm thinking now, I might even, and that's the kind of cool thing, is you can grab this null and you can still basically move it around and kind of change the animation. So I want it to start like really close to the camera. So I'm thinking, so at the beginning it's pretty big, and then later here it gets smaller. So you can see like that. So you can go in and you can change the animation of your bullet. But there you have it. You have a 3D bullet flying through the scene. So there you can see the bullet flying. Turn on the motion blur, and this here basically for that layer of the bullet. As you can see now, especially when it's close to the camera, it's kind of adding that motion. So this is without it, this is with it. So you gotta basically just click this little check mark next to them, or in the column for the motion blur on your object, and then the overall for the scene. And you'll notice that now we have the motion blur. So now that we have the bullet, then next thing we want to add is the kind of the bullet trail behind it. And there's many different ways that you can do it. One way that I like doing it is using a plugin called Particular. So I'm gonna go create a new layer again, a new solid, and I'm just gonna call it trails, and it doesn't really matter again what color, because we're gonna apply an effect to it. So right click on it, go effects, and then here it's part of the trap code suite. So right click on it, go trap code, go to particular. And you notice here we have basically kind of a point right now. It's just again floating in space, 3D space, that's emitting these points, these little like dots. So you know, the particles basically. So we want to go in here and we actually want to change that point. It's basically this point here, so that it's actually emitting those particles where our null is. So basically where our group 1 null is, because that's where actual animation is. So we'll go into here, we'll go to emitter, and for the position we're gonna just link it. So click the Alt key, click on the stopwatch, and you have the little here now that you can basically use this to link the position of the. So we're gonna link it to the position of our null. And the same thing for our Z position. And as you notice, now our point is basically following exactly behind the bullet. So we have these kind of points that are kind of being emitted. Right now it looks like it's snowing or something. Not the effect that we want. So we can kind of go in and start tweaking the animation of it. But the good thing is that now our particle emitter, basically the point of it, as you can see, it's linked. So whatever we moved our bullet, that's where, you know, those particles are going to follow. So here, make this view bigger. We can kind of play around now with the settings. So some of the settings we're going to look at is, for example, you can change the velocity. So basically how much you see, how far it's going to go. In our case, we don't want the velocity to be too much. So somewhere there, I think it looks pretty good. Now we want the particles to be bigger. So we can change that. We can actually go in here into the particle itself, and we can change. We have different particles. We can have glow spheres, different basically shapes. I have these ones here called strictlets, and you can have sprites, for example, which is probably what we're gonna go for. So when it comes to sprite, you want to actually go in and you have to kind of assign something or something as a shape that will actually become the sprite. So we're going to create the kind of a little texture that we're going to use as our sprite. So to do that, we'll create layer, new, create a solid again. In this case, okay, I'm going to make it smaller, doesn't need to be big, so maybe 200 by 200 pixels. And basically I'm going to now click this, go pre-compose, and basically leave all the attributes here. And I'm going to go and double click on this, and in our comp here for the sprite. So I'm actually going to create a little shape here, and the way I'm going to do it is by creating basically a mask. So I'm going to take the circle and just kind of double click, so it creates a mask, as you can see up here. And then we can create another one kind of inside it by holding a shift, and this is going to be our subtract, something like that. So I'm kind of making like a ring, and I'm going to take this one and actually I'm going to feather it. I want it to be like very, very soft on the inside, and I can actually go here to layer, solid settings, and maybe try making it white, for example. So this is how it's going to look now on a black background. And now we can kind of play around with the inner mask here. Maybe make this opening a little bit bigger. Something around there maybe. You can also kind of play around with it here by adjusting the expansion settings and maybe bring down the feather a little. So let's see a shape like this. So I'll close this. For the particle, we want the particle type to be a sprite. Now we gotta assign a texture to it. So we go to textures, and we're gonna choose our sprite shape. And as you notice, now we're getting, instead of just those simple dots like we were getting before, we're getting actually those little rings that we created. And there you can see, this is kind of how it's looking now. And now we can kind of also, kind of play around with the way that this trail looks. You can, again, make it look random. You can kind of change the way that, for example, the particles kind of react over, basically when they're on top of each other. You can change, for example, the blend mode to add, screen, things like that. Can lighten, so you can see it creates now it's kind of more of a varied effect. So you can play around with these settings. There's a lot of different settings, and like I said, it's just really up to you, kind of how you want this effect to look. So once we have our trail here, we can still kind of play around with the shape of it and all that stuff. And like I said, we can always reanimate the position or the animation of the bullet. But what we want to also now do, I think it's going to make the scene look a little bit closer to how it was in the Matrix. It's kind of make it feel almost like it's like a glass effect, where it's kind of distorting what we see behind it. So create that by creating a new adjustment layer. And in this adjustment layer, we'll go to Effects, Distort, click Displacement Map, and we're going to pick our trail layer here as our displacement layer. And we're going to go to Effects and Masks, and here we can adjust basically how much we want to be distorting it. So you can see you can really distort the hell out of it. You can go out like this, like that. Now you see up here it's kind of pulling some of the black, because basically it's pulling the edge. So we're going to click this option, Wrap Around Pixels. You can see this way it just kind of copies the pixels over from the other edge of the scene. So now you can see it starts looking a lot more like this kind of a glass effect. I think it's going to be even more visible maybe if we, let's see if we actually animate this here, show our thing, our here effect, and just kind of move it so that it's moving over. Maybe here it's aiming at his chest, so it's kind of distorting the background there. So you can see here the bullet comes in, and you can see here it's starting to distort the background there behind him. So there you have it. You can see you have this kind of trails, and again you can kind of play around with with, like I said, the animation, all that stuff. One thing, for example, I would also do is maybe adjust the kind of colors here of our bullet, because it looks very kind of contrasty. So I would just go here in our effects and go to the maybe levels, and we'll kind of bring up the shadows so they're not so dark there. You can see there, kind of decreases it, and even the highlights, kind of bring down the highlights a little bit, something like that, so it's not so contrasty, that bullet. And I think there it's starting to look pretty cool. So here's the finished effect, as you can see, in this whole scene. So there's a few different shots. Basically I just used the same techniques in each of these shots as what I just showed you guys. And really now the final thing to kind of make this whole scene look like the film Matrix is to do the kind of colors that look like they're, like in that film. In my case, I just applied one of my famous movies, LUTs, that I have available on my website. If you guys are interested, you can check that out. And also, if you want to check out the other tutorial I did about how I filmed this actual scene, did it really quickly on a low budget, and the info for all of that you can find on my website or in the description of this video. So if you guys like this tutorial, don't forget to smash that like button, share it. If you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And while you're at it, go visit my website and subscribe to the newsletter on my website so you stay up to date when I release other cool filmmaking tutorials or film gear reviews like this one. Anyways, my name is Tom Antos, and that's it for this video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!